Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, core design engineer with Brunswick Bowling, and today we have a pretty fun video for you guys as I am announcing what I consider to be the balls of the year in their respective performance categories for each of the balls in the brands of Brunswick. So what I've done here is I've broken these down by category. We're going to do 4 categories based on motion, shape, and performance. We're going to rank each ball in what category it belongs in, and then I'm going to pick the best of the best, the cream of the crop for our 2024 releases. You may know by now that we are done with balls in 2024, but Brunswick has done an amazing job bringing new core technology and especially new cover technology to each brand in 2024, and we are at the front cutting edge of ball motion in the industry right now. And among those, there have been some sleepers that might surprise you on this list, and there might be some bowling balls that are obvious front runners and clear favorites for the masses. But this list is just my opinion. It doesn't reflect Brunswick's opinion or anyone else. It's just the ball motion that I see based on the testing that I've seen, the ball motion videos that I've watched, and of course the in-person ball motion and feedback and reception. So before we begin, let me break it down by the categories that we're going to use. Again, by ball motion, they are going to be strong mid-lane, strong smooth, clean sharp, and clean arc. So even if the ball doesn't perfectly fit into one of these exact categories, I tried to keep it simple and I broke it down by category into 4. And if balls are on the fringe, they're still considered for the category, and of course they're considered by the performance target that they're built for. There are going to be some balls that are built for heavy oil that are in a clean and sharp category, and some balls that are built for light oil that are in a clean and sharp category. We're just considering the ball motion and its strengths on the condition that it's built for. So with all the technicalities out of the way, let's take a look at the first category, and that is strong mid-lane. In this category, we had 12 releases this year, and the nominees are down at the bottom of the screen. I'm not going to go through each one of these individually. That would be a very taxing video. So before I break it down into the 3 finalists, I'm going to give you some honorable mentions. The first one I want to mention in this category is the brand new Effect Tour. It's pretty early on to judge whether or not this is going to be an all-time great, but certainly it's a great staple in the lineup as we speak. It's going to be really versatile for sport patterns, but compared to all the other balls in the strong mid-lane category, this one is low differential, has a lot less flare potential, is very versatile on a wide variety of conditions, but there are just a few other nominees that are a little stronger for it in this category. One other ball that gets an honorable mention in this category is the Heckler by DV8. This is going to be an incredibly versatile core design, and that's why I'm mentioning it. It's especially versatile for two-handed and no-thumb bowlers, which this core is designed for. If you don't already know, the patent-pending technology in DV8 for no-thumb cores allows you to get an incredibly wide range of drilling options and post-drilled differentials, which means a crazy different range in after drilling flare potentials and usability for this ball. So even though this ball starts at an 051 total differential, it can range from 038 with weak layouts all the way up to 064, which is a massively flaring, and even more than that. It starts at 10 intermediate differential, and you can put layouts on it that range from 10 or 11 points of intermediate differential all the way up into the mid-20s in intermediate differential for no-thumb layouts that do not have a thumb hole. So those are numbers that are crazy for just putting 2 fingers in the bowling ball. So if you're a no-thumb bowler, I would highly consider replacing one of the 3 finalists with a DV8 Heckler. And without further ado, we're going to jump into it. Number 3 in the late strong mid-lane category is the Track Criterion. The Criterion isn't the strongest ball on the list, but it is certainly one that absolutely does its job on heavy oil conditions. It's a really nice blend of ease through the front part of the lane, but still a really hard change of direction in the late mid lane that gives you all the strength that most players are going to need on medium to heavy fresh conditions. So this one isn't the strongest overall in the early mid lane, but that allows it some more back end motion. And because of that, this has been the most popular strong mid lane ball of the 4th quarter of 2024 for us, and it's going to be number 3 on my list overall. Coming in at number 2 is none other than the Black Widow 3.0. This one has been out for almost a full year now, and it's still standing the test of time. If anyone has a little complaint about this ball, it's that maybe it lane shines a little quickly, but a quick hit of a pad to touch up the surface and away you go again. This ball is a little cleaner and a little sharper than a lot of the balls on this list and in this category, but because of that, it offers a wider range of versatility on a wider range of patterns, and because of that, it's also more inclined to be usable for a lot of player styles on house shots as well, where some of the balls on this list are just a little too diggy, too early, or generally speaking too strong to be usable on so many conditions. So because of that, the Black Widow 3.0 Solid, that gets our silver medal. And the gold medalist in the strong mid-lane category goes to none other than the Brunswick Mesmerize. Like the Criterion, the Mesmerize has the highly touted HK22 cover base with the Cohesion additive package, but with this tri-elliptic core, it has another gear. This ball is the earliest of the three on the podium for strong mid-lane reaction, but it also is arguably the most continuous. For a ball that starts up this strong, it is super rare to see it continue to hook at the back of the lane as well as the Mesmerize does. This is the strongest of the three and possibly the strongest overall on this list, but it does it in a way that has a very unique shape. It just continues to curl with a little more continuation than you expect to see out of a ball with such a strong mid lane and such an early read. This is going to be a heavy oil monster if you hit it with surface. If you want to smooth out the surface a little bit, then you might be shocked at the level of versatility for the Mesmerize. So even though it might be not quite as versatile out of the box as the other two on the list on a wider range of medium conditions, a quick surface change makes this one equally playable across a wide range of patterns, and this one handles heavier oil volumes better than the other two on my list. While the strong mid lane category is almost primarily reserved for the top-end asymmetrical balls, you'll start to notice that as we get into the other categories, I start to blend a mix of symmetrical and asymmetrical balls into the category that I feel they best fit in. So next up is going to be the strong and smooth category. Now, just a quick note for the strong smooth category, I also grouped urethane balls into this category. Although they're not quote-unquote strong by definition, they certainly have the early blendy characteristic that the strong smooth category requires, and they fit best in the ball motion path in this category relative to the other categories. So this is going to include all urethane NU balls, as in not urethane, and any symmetrical balls that are smooth enough and continuous enough to qualify. In this category, I have 10 balls, which include the 78D urethane Black Hammer and the Conspiracy, which is the only asymmetrical ball in the category currently. I'm going to shout out a pair of honorable mentions before we get into the top three, and we're going to start with the Hazmat Solid. This one is early, diggy, blendy, and everything that you expect this ball motion to be in this category. With its high differential, it is incredibly useful on heavier and longer patterns, but it has a little bit of limitation getting into the lighter patterns. It starts to get a little early and a little forward as you get with steep open launch angles, and there were just a few balls that performed just a little better than it in this category. So for that reason, it gets honorable mention as a very respectable ball, but not quite in my final three. The other one that warrants this is the Ethos Hybrid. The original Ethos was a relatively sharp symmetrical ball, and the Ethos Hybrid being sanded kind of gives you another dimension. It also contains the Cohesion additive, so this one was certainly stronger, earlier, smoother, and just more ball overall than that original Ethos. So this ball again suited to more medium to medium heavy conditions, although you might be surprised at the ease of length that you get out of this ball. The only thing holding this back is, even with the Cohesion additive, this ball was a little bit smooth overall. Being a hybrid, it has a little more length than something like a Hazmat, but because of that smoothness, it doesn't quite have the dig to get back from steeper launch angles. Sometimes it can get a little long and a little slow, so although it's right at home on medium to medium heavy oil conditions and fresher conditions, longer oil patterns or steeper launch angles can cause this one a little bit of trouble, and for that reason it again gets an honorable mention, probably number 4 on the list if I had to pick. Coming in at number 3, a ball that you don't consider necessarily to be in the strong category, but certainly is in the smooth category, and by ball motion shape it fits this definition to a T. It is the Scorpion Low Flare by Hammer. This one again has been out for almost a year and again has been standing the test of time. I haven't talked hardly at all about sport shot bowling in this video till now, but this one has the right blend of mid-lane traction and smooth continuation to be incredibly useful and usable on fresher sport conditions that are on the medium long to medium short side and anything in between. This ball is also useful for blending out wet dry house conditions as long as there's enough built-in friction to use a lower diff ball. So when the conditions are right, this one absolutely shines. It is just kind of pinned to that more medium range of conditions with a little less versatility than the other balls in my list, and for that reason it receives the bronze medal. Coming in at number 2, a ball that might surprise you, it is the Track Cypher. But the Track Cypher performed incredibly well for our professional staff on sport conditions where you needed ease of length through the front part of the lane and a swift but not sharp change of direction at the back of the lane. This one is the highest RG of all of the balls on the list so far, which means it's going to lope and rev up a little later before it starts its move. All that being said, it's still a sanded solid, so it still has good late mid lane security and a sweeping back end motion, enough punch at the back of the lane to make up for the fact that it starts a little later than the other balls, but not so much back end motion that it gets you in trouble. So just an all-around solid performer, pun intended I guess, but more than that, it just had a wide range of versatility. As long as you put this ball on the right oil volume, it doesn't seem to care what oil length you're dealing with. So for a higher RG symmetrical ball, this one has max versatility and it's coming in with a silver medal position. That leaves just one ball, and to be honest with you, I don't think this category was even close. This is the smallest category of the 4 in terms of the number of releases, and there was one standout to my eye that led the pack this entire year. It is the Game Breaker 5 by Ebonite. First of all, we don't talk about it too often, but this one comes in at the mid-price price point. And I feel like the performance of this ball stands up to some of the upper mid-performing products by some of our competitor brands. This one has the right combination of medium to medium-long length for a solid symmetrical ball, but once it gets started, it has beautiful continuation and looks good going through the pins. It's a relatively smooth shape overall to your eye, but you might be surprised how well it continues, especially to and through the pins. It's actually deceptive how much back-end motion this ball has. It looks really smooth, but it's pretty incredible how easily you can get this ball back from relatively steep launch angles. Of course, incredibly long and heavy volumes are going to be its nemesis, and of course, when the lanes start to burn up too badly, it's not going to get through the fronts. But you can throw a wide variety of medium, fresh conditions all the way down to broken down long conditions at it, and it's going to handle about 80% of the conditions that you see. So that makes it the most versatile ball across a lot of different patterns. It's smooth enough to be useful on sport conditions, and it has enough punch to be useful on house shot conditions. So by far and away, my favorite ball for the strong smooth category this year was the Ebonite Game Breaker 5. Continuing right along in our 2024 best of list, we reach possibly the most highly touted category. It is the clean sharp category. This had the most releases for us at the Brands of Brunswick, and it also probably was the hardest to rank. There were 15 balls in this category. You see them down here. This ball motion category is typically reserved for the asymmetrical balls that have a clean finish, whether it be compound or a smoother sanded finish, that get down the lane and make a sharp back end motion. However, there were 2 symmetrical balls that made the list. They were the Hammer Anger and the Columbia 300 Ricochet. Those are just a step sharper than all the symmetrical balls in the next category, which are the clean arcing category. And because of that, I felt like they were better suited to be up against some of the strongest asymmetrical balls in the clean sharp category. Because of that, I do have one honorable mention. It is the Columbia 300 Ricochet. This one doesn't quite make the podium, but it also is up against competition that's out of its league. It has a symmetrical core, a high differential, but next to some of the asymmetrical shapes, you're just simply not going to get as much back-end motion and slowdown in the late mid lane compared to its competition. But in terms of symmetrical balls and back-end motion and continuation, this was my favorite clean and sharp symmetrical ball of the year by far, and that includes the balls that fall into the clean arc category as well, that some people would characterize as sharp. But for a symmetrical ball, it has the right blend of slowdown in the mid lane and continuation on the back of the lane to handle more fresh conditions than you'd expect. I certainly consider this ball to be a transition ball once you see a little more mid-lane friction and you can get in and open up the lane, but you might be surprised how much head oil you can throw this ricochet through and still have confidence that it's going to respond. That brings us to our number 3 ball on the list for the clean sharp category. It is the Brunswick Vaporize. Not to be outdone by the Mesmerize, the Vaporize certainly held its own as a number 2 ball when the Mesmerize was getting a little too early and too diggy in the mid lane. The Vaporize, of course, with its compounded finish, glided a ton longer down the lane before it made a sharp abrupt motion at the back of the lane. This ball, with its 17-point intermediate differential, of course is going to be a little sharper down lane than a similar look that you get out of the Columbia 300 Ricochet, with just a little more punch in the late mid lane and possibly a little more forward path through the pins. This Brunswick Vaporize is going to be at the top of the list for Brunswick fans when they're looking for a clean and sharp option. But there were a few balls that performed just a little better across a little fresher oil than the Vaporize. I felt like the Vaporize needed just a little bit of breakdown before it was completely useful, and there were a few balls that were a little sharper than it, and more than that, a little sharper on a little more head oil than that, but still gave you predictability for as sharp as they were, and they're next on this list. Coming in at number 2 is the Ebonite 1 Reverb. Back-to-back ball motion categories have an Ebonite ball, and that might surprise some people, but again, this price point, although it's considered a high-performance ball in the Ebonite lineup, is still relatively cheap, as much as $20 and even $30 cheaper than some of the pro-performance competition that it's up against from our competitors, and despite that, it really holds its own. When you put it against some of the incredibly good bowling balls in its category, such as the Hammer Effect and even the Vaporize that we just discussed, this one is probably the strongest ball that's actually in this category. Has an earlier, diggier mid lane than any of the balls on this list, but still has sharp back-end motion that definitely puts it squarely in this category. I wouldn't say that this is an early strong ball, especially with its compound finish. Maybe if you sanded it, you could put it in that strong mid lane category, but it is still in the realm of sharp ball motion. But again, I wouldn't hesitate to throw this on even some of the heaviest of conditions. Like most balls that are clean and sharp, you're going to want to wait for a little bit of mid lane breakdown, but once you're able to get this one in your hands, you can get left of the field and you can open up your launch angles and not have any fear that this one is going to slow down in the late mid lane. As far as total hook goes for this category, this one's the winner, and as far as ball motion goes, this is second to only one ball in this category. This may come as a shock to absolutely no one, but my favorite clean and sharp ball for 2024 was the Hammer Effect. Debuting in March, this was also the debut of the now touted Cohesion Additive. We feel like this additive has increased the back-end continuation and the ability of the ball to slow down and change direction at the back of the lane immensely in our already popular HK22 cover base, debuting it in a hammer ball that had an aggressive core that had attributes of both the Vibe series cores and the Black Widow cores that came before it, means that it was a match made in heaven for players looking for a strong and sharp ball with downlane motion that they haven't seen from the Hammer brand in a long time. It's an early revving core, which means it's not going to skip the mid lane on you. It's going to slow down in the right part of the lane, and of course its heavy rolling nature means that it's going to go heavy forward and strong through the pins. Of course, like all the balls in this category, because of its box finish and its clean nature, it is going to have its limitations, especially early in the block and on heavy oil. But once you find enough developed friction for this one to be useful, it's really hard to put down, and frankly, it's just fun to throw. And because of that, it just edges out the Ebonite 1 Reverb as the top ball, although I think you could use these interchangeably. I don't think you want both of them in your bag. If you need a little more mid lane and a ball to slow down a little more on heavier oil conditions, I would reach for the Reverb, and if you want a ball that's a little more versatile across a wider range of more medium conditions, then I would reach for the Effect. But either way, I don't think you can go wrong. This is more like a 1 and 1A situation for the clean and sharp category. Our final category of the day is the clean arc category, and this is a little more of like what I would consider like the forgotten category, but this is such an important category for late breakdown and transition, especially if you bowl tournaments and your blocks are longer than a standard 3-game set. Having a well-rounded bag that has some options to drop down into that you can still trust to be reliable on a wide range of conditions is so important. And so even though this might not be the flashiest category, it is a super important category, and there were a lot of releases to choose from in this category still, not including the entry-level releases which are not on this list, such as like the raw hammers, the twists, and the rhinos. We still had 14 entries in this clean arc category, all of them in the symmetrical category, because that arc that I'm referring to kind of falls between the sharp ball motion and the relatively smooth ball motion of the symmetrical balls that might be sanded and blend the lane a little better. So this is mostly characterized by symmetrical balls, and of them we had some really great releases. Because of this, I'm going to have a few more honorable mentions than usual. I'm going to mention the Scorpion Strike by Hammer. This one surprisingly did not make my top 3 list, but it has probably been top in sales as far as this category goes. It's just a middle of the bag, no fluff, no frills symmetrical ball that has a medium differential, medium RG, and it's right at home on medium oil conditions. It does the right things and it does it well, but it's not particularly flashy, and there are just a few more balls on this list that are versatile, so because of that, an honorable mention. An honorable mention to Troublemaker Pearl. Just like the Heckler of the strong mid-lane category, the Troublemaker series of cores, known as the dualistic cores, have the same patent pending technology, which means that you can really drop the differential out of this ball with a weak dot to center of grip distance, and you can actually boost the total differential and intermediate differential of this ball enormously by picking a strong, long dot to center of grip distance. That means the Troublemaker Hybrid from a year or two ago and the Troublemaker Pearl make an amazing 1-2 punch for no-thumb bowlers, and you could really build a whole arsenal out of them if you just picked a bunch of different layouts. So because of that, the dualistic core, the Troublemaker, that one's getting an honorable mention specifically for no-thumb bowlers. And last but not least, the best of the rest, as I would call it, is the Stealth Hybrid from Track. So close to making a podium position, the Stealth Pearl and the Stealth were beloved by Track fans. Honestly, undersold balls as far as I'm concerned. The Track brand continues to make banger after banger. I mean, they really haven't missed in terms of their ball motion. The only thing they're missing is a little bit of fan support, because honestly, their ball motion across the brand is next to none, but a little less fanfare for maybe the less flashy colors or the less flashy ball motion. I'm not really sure what it is, but release after release, Track seems to get it done, and the Hybrid is no exception. A wide range of medium fresh to medium broken down conditions. For this ball, the only thing that makes me hesitate about putting it in the top 3 is that for a shiny Hybrid, it was maybe just a touch smoother than everyone expected it to be. A relatively smooth Hybrid overall, but one that still continues and goes through the pins great. So nothing wrong with it, just eked out by the top 3 on my list. The number 3 position for the clean arc category for me is going to the Brunswick Endeavor. I think some of you would argue that this would actually go in the clean sharp category of ball motion, but I didn't think that was a fair assessment relative to all of the asymmetrical balls that crowd that category. This one is certainly built to be clean even for a symmetrical ball with its higher 254 RG. So because of that, this is going to be used on way less oil volume than some of those clean and sharp options in the category before it. But when you put it on the oil condition that it's built for, I would say this is about as sharp as any ball you can ask for. This one is going to be right at home on lighter conditions and beat up panels and surfaces. If you bowl on wood, or if you bowl on old synthetics that have a lot of natural built-in friction, or if you have a center that has an old lane machine that simply isn't putting out the volume that you want, then the Brunswick Endeavor is going to be a treat. It really does clear the front of the lane better than any of the balls that I've listed in any of these categories, and if you can get it to start in the right part of the lane, then it's not going to disappoint you at the back of the lane. It still has those characteristics of continuation that symmetrical balls do. It's not jerk stoppy, and that is a positive attribute for a ball that is so long and so strong. Because of that, it's going to get the number 3 position. Moving over to a ball that's just a little more versatile across a wider range of conditions, number 2 is the Radical No Doubt. This one was a little bit of a sleeper pick. In testing, I think we might have underestimated how popular this one would be in the field. I mean, we knew we had a good ball, and we knew this ball was standing up against the competition in its performance category, but I don't think our testing showed the breadth and width of the ability of this ball to work for so many different player styles across so many different conditions. It's not a ball that you're going to take out on your heaviest, longest sport patterns or a flooded house shot or anything, but if you're bowling on one of those standard house shots across America that has a little less oil volume than you wish it did, then this could be an amazing number one ball right out of the bag, even at its compounded finish. It has a relatively early mid lane for a shiny compounded finish, and because of that, a lot of different player styles are not too nervous to throw this one across a wide range of conditions. It's not a ball that you have to wait too long for the mid lane to develop and come to you. It's a ball that you can use relatively early and you can use relatively often. It's not the longest, it's not the sharpest, but it is certainly one of the most predictable and usable balls on this list, and because of that, it gets the number 2 spot in the clean arc category. That only leaves one ball left on the list, and it is the number 1 ball for the clean art category for me. It's the Ebonite Real Time. This might be a real shock, but despite the fact that it's new, we can tell in testing and we can tell right away in the field that this is a winner. It's got a striking color, so that is certainly helpful, but beyond that, this is a mid-performance ball in terms of price point that's punching way above its weight class. I would pit this against the balls that are $20 and $30 more expensive than it in the symmetrical category in the competition side of things, and I think it holds its own, no problem. This is a ball that's very similar in attributes to the No Doubt, so because of that, I guess my eye gravitates toward these motions. But they're the type of motions that are naturally clean and not sharp down lane, which means they're not unpredictable down lane, but they do make a hard arc. They are really stout on friction, and because of that, this one is kind of the best at what it does. It's not going to get you in trouble, but when there's enough friction to use it, it's just the ball motion that people are looking for, that long and strong symmetrical ball motion. This one is a little cleaner and a little less board coverage overall than a like drilled No Doubt, but because of that, I also think it's a little punchier on the back of the lane, and because of that, I think that it's just a little more usable as you chase the pattern inside and you want to open up your launch angles. This one closes the door a little quicker once it gets started, so even though it is a little longer than a No Doubt, it is just a little whippier at the back of the lane, and because of that, it has a better time getting in with steeper launch angles and kind of closing the door, so to speak, making sure that it's getting up to the pocket and through the pins with no problem. And when the conditions suit this ball's motion, there's not much that can beat it, no matter what the price point is. Well, that's it for me for the ball of the year for 2024 in each respective category. Hopefully this helps you make a ball purchasing decision. Reminder, we're not asking you to buy every single bowling ball that comes out, and especially not in every single category. But what we are trying to do is give you products that fit the lineup the way they belong for each brand. But not only that, I'm making extra content for you guys here on YouTube to help you inform your ball purchasing decisions. What you want to do is buy a ball that fits a gap for a need that you're looking for. You don't want to buy the newest, shiniest ball just because, but certainly when you want to buy a ball to fill a specific spot in your arsenal, you want to have the most informed information about which ball is going to work best for you. And this is just a subjective opinion video, so take it with a grain of salt. Of course, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how all the ball motion for all of these balls go, so don't be afraid to do your research and see which ball suits you the best. We have a lot of fire coming in 2025 that's going to come early and often. I'm very excited about Q1 for 2025, so stay tuned as I make more ball and core videos for the upcoming products. But until then, we're going to break it down by brand. Not only did I do the ball of the year for each performance category, but yes, I have a ball of the year for each of the 7 brands of Brunswick, so stay tuned for the next 7 videos coming out over the course of the next couple weeks. Appreciate you guys liking and following the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.